Hey there, greetings everybody. I want to welcome you here to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So this will be the very last video in this setup here in this place, as I'll be gone from here after this video. Tomorrow we will start next week in the new setup. I have already ideas of how I want to do that. I'm hoping the lighting, the sound, everything will be much better. I'll have my old computer back. Well, maybe not for this week, but definitely for the following week, as that's being stored for me by a friend of mine. So we have the video we're going to do tonight is a remake of the Exploring the Prog Universe, which came out last Saturday. It was actually the second time I uploaded it and had to disqualify the first one because of sound problems. I fixed that and everything was going good until I recorded it and didn't realize that the audio was off again, so I had to I'm redoing it tonight. The audio will not be off tonight. We will have a full audio, so I do apologize for that, and I thank Ben for pointing it out. He noticed it first before I had a chance to review how it was received, and so I took it off the air, and now we're going to redo it. So first of all, the band that we're doing for Exploring the Prog Universe is going to be this band, Greenslade. I have all four of their original albums on on two collections, I guess you might put them, two CDs in each. I like all these albums quite a bit. So first we'll talk a little bit about their history. So they were formed in 1972 by keyboardist David Greenslade and bassist Tony Reeves. Tony Reeves, of course, was working in the industry doing a little bit of production stuff, and he had some connections. So he brought in Dave Lawson, who he knew from some other connections, and he brought him in, and he also brought in Andrew McCulloch, who joined shortly after that for a brief period. I think he was on, might have been on all four of their first albums, I'm not sure, of King Crimson and Fields. That's where he came from. February the 20th, 1973, they appeared on the BBC's The Old Grey Whistle Test. It was their first appearance. By this time, they were already on their third album. Their third album was their most commercially successful album. It might have been because they had been on that show. Reeves then, shortly after that, left the band and was replaced by Martin Briley on bass, and also they added guitar, and Briley added contributed guitar to this album, which was the first album to have that. So a little bit of a different sound to this album. They disbanded after their fourth album because of a conflict with the management, and the management wanted money for them to continue, and it was way too much money, so they decided to disband, which they did. Unfortunately, they did not come back for many years. Greenslade himself went on to a solo career for a while. And after the original breakup, Lawson also became a session musician, a very sought-after session musician. Martin Briley had a bit of a solo career and then wrote stuff for both Celine Dion and NSYNC. McCulloch left music altogether and obtained his master's certificate in sailing, which he continued to do. The band then reformed in 2000 with Greenslade and Reeves, along with new vocalist, keyboardist John Young, and John Trotter joined for the subsequent tour as a drummer. That last album also was called Large Afternoon. So we're going to talk a little bit about their albums now. So we'll start with their debut album, which is simply titled Greenslade. You'll see it right here. If the artwork looks familiar to you, it's because it's by Roger Dean. He did at least these two, and he may have done both of these two, but this one is very different than what I would expect from Roger Dean. So perhaps he didn't do that one. I'm not 100% sure. I didn't see anything on the notes about it. However, These two excellent. Both double album collections have some nice, really great artwork on them, I think. So the debut album, released February the 1st, released in February of 1973, their first album. Dave Lawson on keyboards and vocals, Dave Greenslade on keyboards, Tony Reeves on bass and double bass, and Andrew McCulloch on drums and percussion. This is a very keyboard-dominated album, without a doubt there. There is some piano parts, not as dominant here, but definitely the keyboards are very dominant. It's a fairly heavy-sounding album as well. The keyboards being somewhat heavy here. The bass has a very clear, good sound to it, and some of the catchy riffs are just really proggy as hell, I think. The vocals are kind of a whiny type. I don't mean like a complaining type whining. I mean like his voice is whiny and naturally. So, but not a bad sound. I don't find the vocals are bad. It's just that's the way I feel about them. The second album came out in August of '74. The second album came out in November of '73. I think it was about 8 months after the first album. Again, Greenslade, Lawson, Reeves, and McCulloch are the players on this album. There's a little bit more piano in this album, quite a bit more upbeat, catchy, similar heavy riffs that you got on the first album, but there's more of them. It's very similar to the debut album, I find. The catchy parts are very memorable for this band. I like them. The vocals, again, a bit of a whiny touch to them. Keyboards and synthesizers dominate the album, absolutely. Lots of soloing from the keyboards. The bass is very good on this album. It's probably the first time you really notice the bass being dominant, unless you were listening for it to begin with, which most people wouldn't be, but they'd just be listening to music. But overall, you'll hear it that it's quite a bit stronger on this album. The lyrics are a bit more mundane, not as fantasy driven. There's a little bit more everyday stuff going on there. The guitar adds a more, wrong album. The drums add a little strong part here because they do a solo part, and the drums are very similar to a lot of drum sounds of that time period. He's not a bad drummer. They're just very similar. Not really fantastic drums, but good drums that you got from that time period solos. Yeah, that very sound is what you're getting here. In August of '74, they released Spyglass Guest, which is the odd-looking album here at the top. So Spyglass Quest, or Guest, sorry. Tongue-tied or what, eh? So this album was released in August '74. Lawson, Greenslade, Reeves, and McCulloch are the players once again. So they've been on the first three albums. They added Clem Clemson on electric guitars for a little bit of a couple tracks, I think. Andy Roberts acoustic parts on at least one track, and Graham Smith playing the violin as well. The addition of some other musicians adds a lot of a different kind of sound to their music, making it a lot more proggy sounding, more standard for the day. It's got a really clear sound, this album. The vocals are a little bit whiny, but by this time you're used to it. You'll like it. If you like him, you'll get past his little bit of whininess. It's very proggy, guitar-oriented bits on this album. Bass is, once again, very strong and dominant. I think the guitar really does add the full sound effect on this album, which is good. I think that's why it's probably their best album. I did like it at this point. I liked it a little more than their second. I liked the second a little more than their first. Now we go to the fourth album, which I also liked more, so they keep going up. Time and Tide, fourth studio album released in 1975. Lawson, Greenslade, McCulloch, and the addition of Martin Briley on bass, but he also adds some guitar here as well. This is a heavier album than some of their previous ones. It's quite excellent, I think. He's got a lot of proggy sound to it as well. Morgan Trimble's, the Travaria male choir. Yeah, the Travaria male choir is also on this album. Sorry, I was trying to put that together in a way that made sense. Ann Simmons, Jill McIntyre doing backing vocals on this as well. So some of the vocals are very similar to the predecessor. The bass continues to be strong here. The album feels heavier and has more, it's a little bit more choppy in its guitar sound and overall sound. Strong album. And the choir does sound, the choir sound on, which is the first time they've used, really good here. I think it's an excellent choice. And the piano, of course, is a little bit more than it was previously. So each album that's gotten a tiny bit more. Then we go to the actual final album, which I do not own, which came out in 2000. So now you've got 25 years since passed. Yeah, 25 years. This is originally I think was going to be a solo album, but they decided to reform. So the album was released June the 15th, 2000 with Reeves and Greenslade on here, along with Chris Cousins on drums and Johnny Young back on vocals and keyboards again. More up-to-date vocal sounds here. The production is much clearer than any of the original albums, I think. A bit more poppy than some of the earlier stuff too. I found that was a little bit of a disappointment for me. The vocals are a bit whiny, but not terribly whiny, not like the original stuff was. They are slower and more melodic, but they do have more of a symphonic sound too that they just never had in their original stuff. And the album is, of course, called Large Afternoon. So there you have it. Those are the 5 albums that Greenslade put out. This is an excellent band, I think. Could have been much better if they could have stuck together, but sometimes it's hard for that to happen if you've got past problems with management. You can't get new management. The prog scene had changed when they broke up. It wasn't too long where it was kind of dead, and then they decided not to pursue it, and some of them never went back to music. So difficult for them to make the headway they wanted. Each of their albums from first to fourth were better than the predecessor, with the 5th album coming much later and not nearly as good. But I did like this band, and I will continue to listen to their stuff. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did making it. Please hit the like and subscribe. Don't forget to put your comments about Greenslade in the comment section below, or anything that you feel you want to comment about. You can do that as well. Don't forget the notification bell, and we will see you in a couple weeks with metal. So take care and have a good one. Bye.